Sports Business Journal last year voted Orlando as the best city, sports business city in the United States for hosting events. It's like flying the plane while you're building it. Like we had to fix all that stuff on the fly while we're launching 3 seasons. And I'll never forget thinking about how intimidating that was going to be in terms of changing my career. But in hindsight, just how that opened up this industry to me. Like that will have benefit, 10, 15, 20 years ago when someone else is in my role and all that, right? Like that is, you're building fandom for life. I started, making 20 grand a year, sleeping on my mom's couch, selling baseball tickets in minor league baseball. So it can happen.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to season 4 of the Path to the Pros podcast. We've got our second guest of this season that I'm really excited to introduce. Today's guest brings leadership expertise across the NHL, the NFL, and now the MLS. He's been at the forefront of building fan engagement in major markets. And in this episode, we'll explore exactly what it does take to grow a passionate fan base, especially in a city that isn't traditionally known for a specific sport, and what other teams can learn and take from this playbook. The president of business operations for Orlando City Soccer Club and the Orlando Pride, Jarrod Dillon. It's great to have you on the podcast today, mate.
Samir, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Looking forward to it.
Good stuff. Jarrod, question I always love to open these things with. I'll ask everyone the same thing. Take us back and take us through your journey into sports. Where did it all begin for you?
Well, I'm an old guy. I've been doing this a long time, so I'll speed it up so we don't take up the entire podcast with the bio. I'll just start with my background real quick. My wife and I both grew up in the West Coast, kind of San Francisco Bay Area. Went away to college at University of Oregon. That's where my passion for sports business really started. I went there originally not to necessarily work in sports, but I went there to obviously get my education, but also had the opportunity to play college football there at University of Oregon. And that experience really shaped who I was going to become in I think in my career. And once I found out that you could actually work in sports, luckily Oregon has a great sports marketing program, the Warsaw program, great relationships with Nike and a lot of sports teams. I was able to sit in on a lot of those classes and learn from a lot of those professors. And I pretty quickly said, okay, I want to switch gears. I thought I was going to be maybe a high school teacher and coach and kind of continue down that track, and completely shifted to wanting to work in sports business and specifically on the business side. A lot of respect for my coaches and obviously the agents of the world, but that wasn't necessarily the lifestyle I was wanting to go down. So once I found out you could work in sports on the business side and carve out a career, then I just got laser focused on what that was going to be, and was lucky enough to carve out a job with a minor league baseball team in a league and a team that's no longer around. It was the Western Baseball League, and I worked for a team called the Sonoma County Crushers in Northern California, again, about an hour north of San Francisco. So moved back from college, got that job, and cut my teeth selling minor league baseball tickets. Probably about as a humble sports beginning as you can imagine. For all the younger folks in their careers that are listening, or maybe aspiring students, I'm sitting here blessed every day to be a president of a sports organization with 2 teams, Orlando City and Orlando Pride Soccer. And I started, making 20 grand a year, sleeping on my mom's couch, selling baseball tickets in minor league baseball. So it can happen. You just got to keep working hard and following your dreams, and hopefully work for great people and mentors. And that's what I did. So fast forward a little bit, I was able to catch on with the San Francisco Giants, spent about 7 years with them, worked for some of the most influential people in my career, Rob Sullivan, and who's with the Islanders now, and Jeff Tucker, who's still there helping run things at the San Francisco Giants. And had a great run there, mainly as a sales rep and a very low-level manager. And that's where I first got my true first taste of management. And I said, this is what I was, I think, born to do. I wanted to be around helping leading people or a team and process. And so after about 5 or 6 years of direct selling, I moved into kind of a hybrid management role and really fell in love with it. And that led to me following Rob Sullivan, my boss at that time, across the bay to the then Oakland Raiders. And I worked 3 years there as the head of sales. helped him build out the sales department, which was incredible because a brand as strong, as big as the Oakland Raiders, known around the world, obviously now the Las Vegas Raiders. I had a chance to go in there, and we had a chance as a group to really establish all the ticketing from scratch because it had been outsourced for many years through the county association relationship. And so this was the first time the Raiders were bringing all of that back in house and working for people like Mark Bedane and and others. Amy Trask at the Raiders was such a learning opportunity. So spent 3 years as our director there, and then I was very fortunate to be introduced to someone that's been a mentor in my life for a long time now, Tom Garfinkel, the CEO of the Miami Dolphins and Hard Rock Stadium and F1 Miami. You'll see a theme here as we're talking, that I've been very blessed and fortunate to work with some amazing leaders. And Tom hired me in 2009 to come down to San Diego to the Padres to be his vice president of ticketing. So that was my first opportunity to join an executive team. I worked under Tom for, probably 4 years. He moved on to the Miami Dolphins. I had a chance to then work for Mike D for another couple years as the head of partnerships. And so I split my time at the Padres, kind of 3 years of heading up ticketing and then another almost 3 years of heading up corporate partnerships. And I know for a fact I would not be in my seat where I am today if Tom Garfinkel hadn't approached me and said, "Hey, listen, you've been running ticketing, premium, all the above for a long time. I want you to slide over and work in corporate partnerships." And I'll never forget thinking about how intimidating that was going to be in terms of changing my career. But in hindsight, just how that opened up this industry to me and being able to work under another major revenue stream, maybe no more important than corporate partnerships and sponsorship. And I did that working with people like Tyler Epp, who's now the president of F1 Miami, Brent Stellick, who's a longtime leader in this industry, and Tom, Jeremy Walls, who's the COO of the Arizona Cardinals, Jonathan Tillman, who's running Teambo at the NBA now, all of us working together, and many more, many other leaders. I think Jason Green was just named 40 under 40. He's the head of ticketing for the Dolphins, and Jason was on our staff as a ticket sales rep at that time. So we were deep. We had a really good group of people, and I learned a lot every single day from every one of them. But having that opportunity to oversee partnerships and really change the trajectory of my career. And in 2015, took a call out of nowhere from a good friend, Len Perna, to talk to the Tampa Bay Lightning and the Vinnick Sports Group folks. Went out there, met Steve Griggs, Todd Lywicki, and Jeff Vinnick, and was just blown away by what they were doing. So I think when I came home that day and talked to my wife and said, we've been on the West Coast our entire career. We had 2 little girls, a third on the way, and all of our family was on the West Coast. And I said, "Hey, how do you feel about moving to Tampa, Florida to sell and market ice hockey?" At that point, 12 of my 15 years I'd been spent in baseball. I think that was a little shock at the dinner table that night, but man, it couldn't have worked out better. Just a blessing to move to Tampa at such an incredible time in the history of that franchise and to be a part of what Jeff Vinnick and Todd Lywicki and Steve Griggs had built there and obviously still continue to do this day. And I served as our chief marketing and chief revenue officer there. I was there for 7 years. That's the role I was in for like the last 4. Worked right alongside Steve Griggs for all 7 years and learned directly from him, kind of what it would take to become that next step in my career and take on a team president role. And in 2000, I guess it was 2021, I was introduced to the Wilf family, the owners of the Minnesota Vikings for over 20 years. And they had purchased Orlando City and Orlando Pride and the stadium. And through that process, kind of through the holidays of 21, got to know them, got to know their vision, got to talk to the leadership group from the Vikings and from the Wilf family and the real estate, and just really said, I want to work for these people. And the opportunity worked out, and I started here in Orlando in the new year of 22 as our club president. And essentially, Samir, how we're structured is my executive staff and I have the privilege of overseeing shared business operations for both Orlando City MLS and Orlando Pride NWSL, the reigning champs, by the way. and Inter and Co Stadium, our stadium that we own and operate in downtown in Orlando. And then we have general managers on the soccer side, Ricardo Morea on the men's side, Haley Carter on the women's side, and the three of us report into ownership and kind of run. That's how we run our operations. But like I said, this is my fourth season here in Orlando. Knew Orlando a little bit, being an hour and a half away in Tampa, especially with young kids coming to Disney and the parks, but didn't know the community, obviously, that I was about to get into. And it's been such a blessing and a great ride here the last 3.5 years.
Love it.
I told you I was going to try to take, that took too long. I apologize.
No, you're good.
Trying to surmise 25, 26 years of my career into a few minutes.
You done well. You done well. I think it's fair to say congrats, because that's it's an incredible run. And some of the names that you were dropping in there, great people to be working with and for. What a lineup, by the way, at the Padres. That roster that you mentioned, then that's everyone individually has gone on to achieve great things. So to be in that environment at that time must have been phenomenal.
I was very lucky, and again, all praise and kudos goes to Tom Garfinkel. I think one of the biggest lessons I learned at that point in my career, and I was very lucky that it was very early on, like my first executive job, was just the true value of taking your time to go find and hire the best people, and then giving them the resources and staying out of their way to let them blossom. And again, I go through that. Like, we didn't win anything. We didn't win any championships. We didn't necessarily break any records. We just had an incredibly good group of people working together that were learning from each other, and we were all on the same page. And so wherever I've gone since then, I've tried to take that mentality with me to Tampa and to here. And I've been very fortunate to surround myself here in Orlando with what I humbly believe is one of the best executive teams in sports. And I hope, and I hope I'm doing my job, doing right by our owners, that, multiple folks on my executive team will be in this position, sitting in my seat, running this club or other clubs in the future. And I'm very confident in saying that, because I know their abilities. And that's one of the things we talk about. How do we continue to help uplift each other? I think that is a great sign of leadership culture, is that you're going to help each other build. And at some point that may mean people move on to other things, and that's okay. That's part of what we're doing, part of the journey that we're all on together.
There was one part that you mentioned in there that I'd just like to spotlight. You said that Tom Garfinkel encouraged you to take a partnerships role when you'd just been overseeing ticket sales and premium and service. Just talk to us a little about that. I think you described it as being, monumental to helping you get to the position that you're in today, because speak to a lot of people that are in a comfortable position. They've done well to get to the position that they're in. And then there comes a time where, especially if you're, trying to become a C-level exec in the industry, there comes a time when you need to transition into a role that gives you an additional trait or an additional flair that maybe you don't have within your skill set. Sometimes that does require taking a bit of a step back. Sometimes there's that, the ego can come into play, and you think, well, I've spent the last 10, 15 years getting to this point. I don't want to start at, maybe not ground zero, but, ground one or ground two, and work my way back up through the ranks. So just talk to us about that, and maybe any thoughts or advice that you could share of where other people may be in a similar situation, and what really encouraged you to take that step, and ultimately, the success that it's given you today.
Yeah, I think one of the things at the time I wasn't thinking about that Tom really helped me understand was, that I didn't want to get pigeonholed being one type of executive, right? Like being one subject matter expert. And for me at the time, that was ticketing, premium suites, ticketing, all kind of rolled into one. I had been doing that for, at the time, probably 12 years. And, to be able to be in the seat that I am now, you need bandwidth to be able to oversee more. You need to have more insight into more parts of the business. There's a lot of companies out there that, have executive programs where they're putting executives into a role for a year or 6 months or whatever that is, and moving them around the company. The reason is that to get them to be as well-rounded as possible, is know as much about your business as possible. And Tom very, basically explained it to me that, listen, going over to corporate partnerships, you've been working alongside them for a long time. You understand the business, but until you're in it day to day, doing it, working on it, that's a completely different part of understanding the business. And he couldn't have been more right. And so for me, being on the revenue side, you're probably not going to have that opportunity in your career. Nobody was going to take me and say, "Hey, we're going to have you go be the VP of finance," right? Or maybe
Right.
have you go be the controller or the head of security. Like, there's too many jobs, right? You'd spend your whole career moving around every 6 months to a year. So being strategic about what makes sense to your skill set and where you add value to the company. And, whatever those reasons were, Tom felt like I was going to add value in the corporate partnership side. Part of that was I had an incredible leader and friend in Tyler Ebb that I was going to report into, that I could always go to, right, if I needed help on something and learn from. And that's really what I did that first year. I was fortunate to kind of go laterally from VP to VP, but I've talked to friends and other people in the industry that have maybe said, "Hey, I might need to take a step back and quote step back in title, go from a VP to a director or a director to a manager to be able to make that move." That's okay too, because I think all of us need to think about our careers, 2 or 3 steps ahead, like a game of chess, not a game of checkers, right? You always hear
Right.
that analogy. And it's not always linear. It's not always, "Oh, I'm going to work in this role as a director for 2 years, and then I'm going to be a VP for 2 years." Well, at some point, if you spent 15, 20 years in one role, it might be harder to make that change. And that's what Tom helped me realize. Fast forward a couple years later, I was interviewing in Tampa, and Steve Griggs gave me that same opportunity. I had left as the VP of partnerships at the Padres, overseeing that group for 2 or 3 years. And when I went to Tampa, I was not overseeing partnerships. I went back into ticketing as our EVP of sales and marketing originally. But the other two areas that really attracted me to Tampa that Steve gave me the opportunity to oversee were retail, merchandise operations, and then also marketing. And again, two other areas of the business I had not overseen day to day. And so in my mind, and talking to my mentors, hey, no problem. Would I have liked to had 4 or 5 or longer years under partnerships at that point? Maybe. But to go in and oversee those other new parts of the business gave me a whole new opportunity, like I had done in San Diego. So that's why I made the move to Tampa. Fast forward after a couple of years of that, the partnership group ended up kind of rolling back underneath me anyway, through some of the added things we had added on with Vinnick Sports Group. Some of our other executives took on other properties, and I was asked to lead that group. So kind of came full circle to allow me to oversee all of revenue and marketing. But again, with those two moves, those were scary, right? And when you talk about advice for people listening, I think so I don't remember. I wish I could give them credit. I don't remember who told me this, but when you're feeling a little anxious, a little nervous, a little scared, that's probably a good place. That means
Yeah.
you're uncomfortable, right? And the thing we want to avoid is complacency in our
Yeah.
careers. Continuous education, continuous learning, continuing to push yourself, and going into a new part of the business really forces you to do that. You have to be a student of the game, and be immersed in the business every day. And so those were just two examples for my career and my life that I was fortunate to kind of have that put in front of me.
You mentioned the analogy that you mentioned then I really liked the playing chess, not checkers. I think it's very easy and I mean just very natural for us as humans to always be thinking about what's next. You think about what's next, you think about a level up. It's not often that you're thinking about, well, I want to get my pawn to the other side of the board. What's the most
Right.
efficient way for me to do that? Yes, I can move one piece at a time, but I can also use other ammunition, skill sets within my ability to be able to get there. And if that means I've got to take a bit of a sideways move or a lateral move, as you said, then it makes sense to do it for the long run.
Yeah.
Um, so that's really helpful. So I think you said 2021, early 2022, right? You land in Orlando, president of business operations for the two teams there. What was your initial assessment of the soccer fan base when you first joined? Now, that may have come from the interview process, in visiting the city
Yeah.
and doing the whole back and forth thing.
Yeah.
It may have come really on day one or week one of the job. But what was your take when you first landed there?
Yeah, it kind of rolls into the why too, because other than like, okay, here's a chance to be a president, like why would I leave that opportunity in Tampa? I'm working for incredible leaders, incredible owners, in a great city where my that's really all my daughters knew at that point, and our family was very happy. So like, why would you rock the boat and go do all that? I think there was three really reasons. The first I mentioned earlier, but the Wilf family. one of the most amazing groups of people I've ever been around, and I get to work directly with all the Wilf family, but Mark Wilf in particular, who I report into and is our governor and chairman. Everything they've done in Minnesota with the Vikings over 20 plus years of leadership, everything they've done philanthropically in the communities that they live and do business. Everybody that I talk to in this industry, because I did my homework, just checked out time and time again. And so that was kind of the first box. I needed to make sure I was leaving a good situation and I was going to another good situation. Number two was soccer as a sport. And I had never worked in soccer before, if you couldn't tell from when I was rattling off my bio. And I didn't play soccer as a kid growing up. I played football, baseball, basketball, and football in college. And so it wasn't like I was some like diehard, I need to go do this. For me, it was in sports business where I think and where we've seen soccer going over the last several years and how far we still have to go in the US. But, the opportunity with, FIFA Club World Cup that we're hosting right now, we have games going on. We had 2 games in our building at Inter & Co Stadium in Orlando last week, games at our neighbors next door at Camping World. Next year with with Country World Cup, FIFA Men's World Cup coming, Olympics in 28, 2031, the announcement of Women's World Cup coming. Just looking at that runway of soccer, right? And being a part of that, I wanted to be a part of that. And then the third piece was more personal it's business too, but for me, it was very personal. Us having a men and a women's team was a huge opportunity. Listen, a lot of people that have been in roles where they've had two sports teams, 2 clubs, whatever you want to call it, to oversee, it's hard because you have to balance those shared services and make sure that you're doing right by both groups and you're putting the right resources to the right time and when. And that's not easy. But for me to have the opportunity to come in and work on a women's team and to be able to impact the growth of the NWSL, which is the best women's sports league in the world, I'm convinced, certainly soccer, at such a vital time of women's professional sports, just rocket ship taking off, was really important to me. And I'm a girl dad of 3 daughters, right? So for my daughters to see that and be around that was really important for my wife and I. And those are the reasons why we decided to take this leap of faith. And, on the soccer side, I knew Orlando as a community from visiting, not from living here, not from doing business here. What I've learned in, 3.5 years now, I'm not the new guy in town at all anymore, but what I've learned is this community, not just soccer, sports in general, rallies around its sports. You probably saw Sports Business Journal last year voted Orlando as the best sports business city in the United States for hosting events. That is led largely in part by our sports commission, Jason Siegel and the Greater Orlando Sports Commission, our elected officials, the mayor of Orange County, the mayor of the city of Orlando, Visit Orlando, all of our elected officials, everybody working together. The Orlando Magic, Orlando City and Orlando Pride, our friends at Florida Citrus Sports, who bring a ton of great events here, and Orlando Venues as a whole, who own and operate Kia Center where the Magic play and Camping World as well. All of us working together to put in these incredible bids to bring events here, the Pro Bowl, multiple, MLS All-Star, all the FIFA Club World Cups. Orlando was the only city with 2 venues right now for the FIFA Club World Cup, both us at Inter & Co Stadium and our friends at Camping World got games. So that, I don't know that I would have been able to predict all of that 4 years ago before I knew the town and knew everybody. But as I got into the interview process and I started to talk to more people around town, I started learning those things and going, wow, this community really rallies around its sports. And a big part of that is because of the economic driver and catalyst that sports is. Orlando has 75 million visitors per year.
Wow.
Okay. I think New York is number 2 at like 45 million. Put that into perspective.
Yeah,
that's amazing. And that's because of a lot of reasons. We have an incredible convention center, one of the largest convention businesses in the United States. We're very close to the cruise ports and the Space Coast. We have incredible theme parks, but it's also because of sports, professional sports, and youth tourism on the sports side. And so working with Disney and all the others, ESPN, Why Rule the Sports, that attracts all the youth sports here. it's really a great ecosystem to be a part of. And that was one thing, probably in hindsight, I probably wasn't expecting as much. I just didn't know it.
Yeah.
But it's really what separates Orlando from any other market, certainly that I've been in.
And so you recognize that there is a sports fan base in Orlando, right? So you recognize that. How do you then convert that sports fan base to being maybe not necessarily more soccer centric, but certainly
Yeah.
more soccer centric than they were? Because there's a journey, isn't there, that you need to take the fan through, and it isn't just come to a game and hope that you like it, right? There's
Yeah.
obviously much more. If it was that straightforward, I think
Yeah.
that would probably all be out of business. But just talk us through what step one and really the first domino that you had to play that really led the growth, because the growth that you've been through, and you and I have spoken offline about this a few times, in the attendance from when you first joined the business to the attendance now, both on the men's and
Yeah.
women's team, has just gone through the roof. And so there are clearly steps that you've taken to get there. If you were, sat back there again in Jan or Feb of 2022, just
Hmm.
more so for
Yeah.
people to be aware of
Yeah.
that first initiative that you really drove to take the business forward.
So I think the hardest part about when I first got here was we had just gone through a really tough time. Everybody had, right? A couple of years of COVID.
Right.
What did that mean? Well, that meant a lot of, positions that were left unopened. So you had a lot of people doing additional work, maybe feeling undervalued. You had a lot of, budget cutting. We had an ownership change. So, we had executive leadership change with myself, and there was just a lot of unknown and where were we going. At the same time, Orlando City's attendance, if you look at it historically, had kind of fallen off from the first couple of years of the stadium, had kind of waned. Orlando Pride being launched, never really got to, I think, what we've seen with women's professional sports right now, being launched back in 2016. And I just came in at a really odd time. And the first thing, when you say about the things you had to do, the first thing I recognized, ownership and our executive team and I, was like, we got to get things right internally. And before we can worry about what are we going to be to everybody else in the community, we got to get things right internally, because I'm a firm believer that if you treat your employees right, you have a great culture, that's going to permeate with your partners, with your fans, with the community as a whole. So we spent an inordinate amount of time, a lot of time that first year, on resetting the culture. And that was a combination on putting, new people in the new places and restructuring and reorienting. And ownership was great about investing more resources into more roles. And, I want to say in my first 2 years here, we probably had 75-ish kind of new faces into the organization. That's going to dramatically change your culture, right? All those new perspectives of people coming in, molded with kind of the best of the past people that had been here and wanted to stay on here and wanted to be on this journey going forward. And so we spent a lot of time trying to ultimately figure out what our vision and our mission and our values were going to be. And we did a 6-7 month project. We worked with our friends at UCF to bring in some specialists to help us do that, because I didn't want it to be something that our employees thought was being handed down from executive team or ownership. We wanted every single employee to be a part of that journey. And where we netted out on that was our vision is being the pride of our city. So, pun intended, being the pride
Right.
of our city. Our two teams worked into that, and representing both of our clubs on and off the field. Our mission is to unite our community, create memorable experiences, and fuel passion for soccer. Pretty straightforward. That's what we're here to do. And then our values that we're going to live every day, we self-selected and let our staff kind of self-select. What do you think we should stand for? Who are we? Every decision that we make, what should they ultimately aspire to be? And that was being passionate, authentic, diverse, and fan first. And so every one of those things goes into our KPIs, our business plans. If we're spending time on something that doesn't help us get to one of those goals, we shouldn't be doing it. But I tell you that just for backstory, especially for anyone listening that, has thoughts about being in leadership, or how do you lead during a time of transition or a time of challenge. That was a really, really big part of it. I'm a firm believer that people don't care what you know until they know you care. And I spent as much time as I possibly could while trying to, I started in February. We had, or January rather, we had 3 seasons to stand up by March. Our first team men, our second team men, and our first team women. So you're trying to run a business and launch a season, but at the same time, you're trying to imagine who you are as an organization and get the culture going. So a lot of one-on-ones. I think I met with every single full-time employee minimum of once for half hour one-on-one like this. And it was simply tell me about yourself. Who are you? Why are you here? What do you think we do really well? What are you proud of? What do you brag about to your family and friends about your work? Conversely, what are you nervous about? What are you scared about? What do we not do well? And this was just, 100 and oh gosh, I can't even imagine how many it was at the time. Maybe 115, 120 one-on-ones. Some people had 2 or 3 emotions flowing. Some people at the height of I love what I do. Some people at the lows of I don't know, I can't go on anymore, and all the emotions involved in those things. And I'll tell you what, after a couple months of doing that, a few of those every single day, your staff's going to tell you everything you need to know. Here are the tea leaves. Here are the themes that develop pretty quickly. And once we established those, then we knew what we needed to go do and fix. We needed to be more transparent with our people. We needed to share more information about what was our company doing in the community. How was our business doing? What are we doing to put more employee programs in place to make them feel valued about their experience here? How are we helping them develop as leaders, personally and professionally? And so we had to fix, it's like flying the plane while you're building it. Like we had to fix all that stuff on the fly while we're launching 3 seasons.
Right.
And thank goodness that I signed up to work for incredible owners that were like, you know what? We get it. You're right. You got to get all that fixed before you start fixing the business. So that first year, it was almost like we had a mulligan on the business side. Yes, we did really good work and we changed some things, but it was like, let's get our house in order first, because that's going to allow us to be the best versions of ourselves for our community, our partners, our fans.
Love that.
So
internal alignment is a lot of what I'm hearing there. And look, it makes sense, right? If you apply that to any other environment, if you're a sports team, right, we'll stick with the same world. If you're a sports team, you don't have 11 players all run out on the soccer field and just have at it, right? The coach sits down, right? Here's our objectives.
Yep.
Here's what we need to do. Talk to me about what is working. Talk to me about what isn't working. Let's set a clear agenda of how we're gonna take on this game, take on this season. And it sounds like you've done pretty much the exact same thing off the field. And obviously the challenges, coming out of that, you're right. You've got COVID, you've got the impacts that COVID had on everything and everyone, both professionally in the industry, personally with individual situations. So certainly doesn't sound like an easy situation that you found yourself in. But you've established that you've created that culture, let's call it, or you've built that culture.
Which is the stuff that nobody sees, right? Like nobody sees that. That's in the office every day.
Yeah.
Then you're going to transition into what does the public actually see? What do your fans and sponsors see?
And how important would you say that it was, as you were working through those internal discussions, to really try and tie that culture and that identity into the broader Orlando community?
Well, it was critical for us because we didn't have a North Star. We had to figure that out. Like, what are we here to do, and how are we going to go do it? And how do we, whenever we pause and look at how do we know we're achieving those goals? And so we had to break it down really granularly, right? And make sure that everything was building up to our mission, vision, values. And the things that we put in place externally that I think if you surveyed our fans, and we did, and you had focus groups and you talked to our sponsors and just people in the community as a whole, the first 2 years, we really set out on a journey of improving the fan experience, because not being responsible for the actual soccer operations, right? Our GMs I don't have anything to do with, building the coaching staff, the roster, that type of thing. I'm here as a shared service, finance and legal and all those things to help them. But ultimately that's their decisions with ownership. So put aside team performance. We had no idea if we were going to be making the playoffs 5 years in a row like Orlando City has, or winning the championship after, this past year like the Orlando Pride did. We had to build the best fan experience possible. And there was really three things that we put on a 2-year plan to lay out, and I'm really proud that we've done. Number one was our food and beverage program. We wanted to be more authentic and local, and so we launched a program called Orlando Made, working with our partners at Oakview Group. And we've gone out and now sourced. We started with 8 to 10 when we announced it. We're now at over 25 local Orlando founded, or the chefs are from Orlando, or the concepts were born here. Orlando made food and beverage partners, and they are in the stadium every match, every event.
Love that.
And so, it's a source of pride for our fans. We've seen our food and beverage scores jump off the charts over the last couple of years in terms of satisfaction, in terms of identity, being able to recall who they are and know the brands, because we live in a great food town and people are proud of where they live. And so we went out and sourced tacos and barbecue and all kinds of different food, pizza, whatever it is, hamburgers from all different neighborhoods of Orlando, and brought them into the stadium. Not the pay to play model where somebody has to come in and sponsor to have a concession stand. This was, let's go find the best people in this category that make the best hamburger, whatever that is. Let's bring them in. Let's figure out a deal that makes sense for them, because we wanted to support local small businesses where they actually make a little bit of money back. We're not asking them to cut us a check. And we're using it's that halo effect. We're using both of our IP, both of our brands, to go tell a bigger story in the community. And then they're getting, close to 500,000 people now a year we have coming through our venue, seeing who they are or getting to try them. So this was a labor of love that took several years to get it to where it is today. But that was one of our very first goals, because when we thought about what could improve the fan experience the most, it was the game day environment and, kind of the in-game game entertainment, if you will, food and beverage, and then guest services. So that's how we approached food and beverage. On guest services, we didn't have a guest service program in place, so to speak, that was from a training standpoint. We have, I want to say, roughly eight different vendors, third-party vendors that we work with that are in the building on a game night. That could be security, guest services, parking, concessions, merchandise. We hired somebody to come in. Actually, someone from the Minnesota Vikings, Jessica, came in and created our gold standard service, where we trained all of our partners, all of our full-time staff, part-time staff, up to 700 people on a game night that operate the building. We do our best to train everybody on on the same program, our gold standard of customer service. And that was kind of the second thing we implemented. And then the third was our game entertainment. And that was really working with our marketing team to drive the best fan experience possible. And our owners really believed in that. Over the last 3 years, they've invested over $4 million into the stadium, and renovations from new video board, new LED, fun things for fans to do, whether it's a selfie station, all kinds of gadgets and things like that. 250 new TVs throughout the concourse. The first major, what I would say, renovations that the building's had since it opened in 2017. So we did all three of those things kind of at the same time, but over the course of a couple years, to get to where we are today. And that's what I think the output that our fans would notice. All the stuff behind the scenes that I talked about earlier, nobody externally probably knows those things. That's all the in-house culture building that you're doing. But to get everybody on board, to get everybody rowing in the same direction and believing in where we were going, we needed to do that first.
What if your next hire could shift your entire season? What if you never had to settle for second best ever again? In the world of sports and entertainment, pace is everything. You don't have to sift through weak resumes or wait months to fill senior roles. That's where your partnership with a global talent partner comes in. As a Financial Times fastest growing company 3 years running, when you partner with Forsyth Barnes, you'll tap into a global talent network built specifically for the fast-paced world of sports and entertainment. Having placed talent for some of the biggest leagues, venues and brands in the industry, you can connect with world-class candidates fast and onboard the top talent that you need to succeed. 98% of roles filled. 92% of candidates staying in post over 2 years. Delivery guaranteed. Forsyth Barnes, your global talent partner, disrupting the recruitment industry. Book your free hiring consultation now at www.forsythbarnes.com and see just how your competitors are staying ahead. And I think it's important to highlight that you were doing this, or you are doing this, we're doing this in a city that, to your point, has 75 million people. I think you mentioned in tourism that visit every year. You've got, the theme parks, which are very popular. My first ever visit to Orlando was to go to the theme park when I was a little younger. Not as young as maybe I should have been going to the theme parks, but had a good trip there nonetheless. The tourism, like I said, other sports teams that you've got that are local. How did you guys go about carving out relevance in what is and was a very crowded, entertainment landscape? Because that mustn't have been easy to distinguish yourself in a market that, has tourism, which is great, and you can see the pros and you can take the positives from that, but trying to convince those tourists to come to a game, to maybe visit your first ever soccer match.
I think we've had, and probably have had for a long time, the people that are, diehard Orlando City and Orlando Pride fans, we've had those folks. They've been here from day one and they've never really gone away. I think our strategy is, how do we grow that, right? And how do we bring in more casual fans, or maybe people that have relocated here that were fans of other teams, and get them involved? And it's been a multi-prong approach to that. On the soccer side, one of the ways we've done that is to partner from a youth soccer standpoint, get to the kids. We have, I want to say, roughly 15,000 kids now playing some sort of youth soccer at some level with us. Some of them are on the high end of the competition that are playing for our academy teams. We have 10 soccer school partnerships. These are third-party soccer schools, but that we've worked with them to brand their school Orlando City or Orlando Pride Soccer School, drop in the name, right? Lake Nona, Windermere, Winter Garden, wherever they're located. All of those kids are running around wearing either Orlando City or Orlando Pride crest and our partner Orlando Health across the chest of their jersey, just like the pros do. And we're interacting with them, whether it be ticketing to get them out to games, whether it be getting our mascot, our players out to their practices, whether it's their coaches getting to learn from our coaches. Our Nick Santos and the team that I get to work with on our youth soccer side have done a phenomenal job of canvassing all of Central Florida, not just Orlando, but all of Central Florida with Orlando City and Orlando Pride. And we took a major step with that again this month, actually, in the month of June, where over 4,000 of those players that are playing on all girls teams are switching to fully Orlando Pride uniforms.
Wow.
So that's massive, right? Like, that will have benefit, 10, 15, 20 years ago when someone else is in my role and all that, right? Like, that is, you're building fandom for life, right? For our women's team. So that was one strategic way we've done it. Another strategic way is be as present in the community as you can be. And one of our biggest assets to do that is our stadium. Inter and Co Stadium, privately funded and financed. Our owners own 100% of it. And so we can operate it as we see fit. And one of the ways that we've said, hey, how much more impact can we have in our community? It's hosting events here, right? Everybody is on a board, is trying to help a nonprofit and wants to be involved and needs a venue to do those things. When I look at 2024 alone, we were fortunate recently to win a couple awards as an organization that our downtown partnership puts on. One of the things I'm most proud of when I was doing research for that event and our submission was, we had over 230 events at Inter and Co Stadium that were not soccer related.
Wow.
So all sizes and shapes. And that is working with all kinds of local nonprofits. I mentioned our downtown partnership, working with the Florida Diversity Council. We hosted the LGBTQ plus Unity Summit. We hosted the Brazil Florida Business Council. We hosted the African American Chamber of Commerce event here. We're very close and work with events with our Hispanic Chamber. So doing as many things in the community as possible to bring in as many people from all walks of life to experience Enter & Co Stadium with the hope of introducing ourselves to them, humbly asking for them to come back and try a city or a pride match at some point. And, I think I always tell this to people when I meet different nonprofits, like, we're probably not going to be the one that can always write the biggest check, but we can figure out a way to partner to add value to your organization. We do a number of community service days. Our employees have a full day separate of our normal holidays off paid that they can go volunteer whatever they want to do. On top of that, we have a community service day on Patriots Day 9/11 that we do as a company in partnership with Orlando Health and Heart of Florida United Way. And so I think that's been one, like, we really over index, I think, in the size of our company and our budget for our impact that we have in our community. And the biggest thing that we do is we just try to be good neighbors. We just try to figure out ways, working with partners here in Paramore. That's the neighborhood that we are based in Orlando City proper, and then even Orange County, or sorry, all of Orange County and all of Central Florida, having as much impact as we can have. So, hosting events like that give you the opportunity to do that. And it doesn't matter if it's a small board meeting for 20 people or, a couple thousand people for a private company event. How can we get exposure to them through our stadium? So those are just a couple ways on the youth soccer side, and then on the business front, utilizing this stadium that we've tried to do that in the community over the last few years.
Good for you guys for recognizing that, and doing it in a way that almost, from everything that you're saying anyway, seems natural, right? You've not gone out of your way and tried to lure people in with discounts or whatever. Come to this event and you can have a discounted season ticket or a discounted game, right? It's giving back to the community. It's giving the locals what they want to see, what they want to hear, and giving them that platform to be able to speak about the things that they are, individually as individuals, or as business folks, or as sports fans, the opportunity to talk and have a voice. And I always think that those, what may seem smaller things at the time, but are actually much bigger things when you think about it, do tend to go a long way. Jarrod, this has been exceptional. One last question for you before we wrap here. What advice would you have to any other leaders that are maybe in the same shoes that you were in back in January of 2022, and trying to build a fan base from scratch in what can be deemed as a non-traditional market?
Listen to your partners, listen to your fans, and equally as important, listen to your staff. It's amazing when we take the time to have conversation and, do surveys, small focus groups, one-on-ones. If you do that enough, and if you listen well enough, you're going to be given the answers. And I think we've learned that here. It's not to say, Samir, at all that we have it all figured out. We have a lot of work to do. We have very aspirational goals and we have a long way to go, but I'm very proud of the steps that our staff has taken, working with each other and then working with our fans and our partners as well. For folks that are listening, thinking about their own careers, I think the best advice I could give you is find great mentors, find people like I described that I've had in my life that care about you equally as a person as they do an employee, and hold on and never let go, man. Like, those people will be in your life forever. And then the other great thing about our industry is if you are fortunate to do that, it is your, you have to pay it forward.
Yeah.
Right. You need to give back and do that for others. I've tried to do that. I hope that other people would say that I've been a mentor in their career, but that's honestly the best compliment any one of us in our industry, I think, could give. At the end of the day, what do you want on your tombstone, right? Is the old adage. And it's not going to be, I hit this revenue goal, or I didn't, or I did this or that. It's how many lives did I impact? How many people did I help grow, right? And I think that's something really important that's hard, because people get caught up in what's next and what's my title and how much I make and what's the next role. There's a way to do both. A good friend of mine, Jeremy Walls, always reminds me, hey, we can be great at all of it, right? We can be great in our family. We can be great in our faith. We can be great at our work. You don't have to choose. You can do all of those things.
Yeah.
And I think, not sacrificing that and not settling for less is something to always keep top of mind. And that's hard to do as you're trying to climb the ranks and grow your career and your life. But for someone that is at least an old guy that's been around now for a while, I can say that's one of the best pieces of advice I think I could give to someone early in their career.
Love it. Jarrod, that's brilliant. Well, look, huge congrats from me, on the exceptional career that you've had to date. I'm sure there's a lot more that you're going to go on and accomplish. B, to the successes that you've brought to Orlando and both teams, back-to-back playoffs for consecutive years and a championship with the Pride last season. And good luck with everything that you guys are trying to build. I'm excited to get down to Orlando, and I'm sure that anyone listening has certainly taken some interesting bits to go away and think about on their next trip down to the city as well. So thanks so much for joining the podcast. It's been great having you on.
Thank you for having me, and you're welcome here anytime. I look forward to hosting you.
Fantastic. All right. Thanks, guys. We'll be back with another episode next week.